combining images. When people aren't asking, hey, how do I pull this object off the background? Then they're probably asking, hey, how can I combine two images together? For example, I want to remove a dreary sky and replace it with a nice, lovely, pleasant sky. How do I do that? Well, what we need to do is we need to actually grab another image out of another file and drop it into this image. And that's exactly what I want to show you here in this exercise. So before we get to that, though, there's a couple of extra things I want to show you here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect Controller Command D. That gets rid of the marching ants. I'm going to hit the V key on my keyboard to flip back to the Move tool. And what I can now do is I can actually click and drag on my statue to move him around inside the image window. I can't do this with an object that's sitting on a background layer because don't forget a background layer is flat and he's also locked as well. Okay, so if you want to reposition your objects, move them around, no problem. Way back when, we opened another work file. We opened clouds.jpg, and this is the background that I want to use behind my statue. So how do I go about dropping this image into statue.jpg? Well, there's a variety of different ways that you can actually pull this off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip back over to statue for a moment. And what we need to do is we need to see both image windows. Okay, so I think maybe what I'll do is I'll grab clouds.jpg and I'll tear him away so that I have a floating window, something like this. So I can see clouds and I can also see the statue as well. Another option for you is to perhaps tile your two image windows. So, something like this, tiling vertically or tiling horizontally. That would be just fine as well. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I have my Move tool, and what I can do is I can bring my cursor into one image window, my clouds, and literally click and drag from clouds into the statue graphic or the statue file, something like this. Okay? Now, that's one way to do it, by the way. I could have grabbed the layer as well and dropped the layer inside the image window as well. Perhaps if there's enough time later on, I'll show you that technique. It's pretty cool. Now, what I get here are just massive clouds, but check out the Layers panel. Over inside the Layers panel, we now have the statue layer, and we have Layer 1 for the clouds. I can see inside the layer thumbnail the actual clouds themselves. So before moving on, I think I better rename this guy so I don't forget what's on there. So I'm just going to double-click him, and now I can actually rename this guy right inside the Layers panel. Clouds, there we go. Now, notice, of course, that all I'm seeing here is clouds. That's because the clouds layer is on top of the statue layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab clouds. I'm going to make sure that he's selected, and I'm going to click and drag him, literally drag him down inside the Layers panel, thus dropping the clouds behind the statue. What I can do next is I can use my Move tool to reposition the clouds inside my document. I can move the clouds around, something like this, right? Or what I can do, of course, is I can go back to the statue layer and I can drag the statue around if I'm so inclined. Or what we could do is, check this out. I'm going to grab the clouds layer here. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, something like this. And I'm going to use my free transform. Remember your free transform from not too long ago? Remember the keyboard shortcut, Control or Command T on your keyboard? Look how huge these clouds are. If I keep zooming out, this frame here, this free transform frame, represents the size of the clouds. So as a matter of fact, I could hold down Shift and grab a corner of the free transform frame and actually drag down, shrink down the size of the clouds, maybe something like this, right? And then maybe drag this guy to the left or maybe over to the right or, whatever it is I'm after. And I want to get something that's sort of pleasing here to the eye, right? Maybe something like this. That looks pretty cool. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit Enter on my keyboard to lock in those changes. So, as a quick review, what we did when we wanted to combine two images is we needed to see both image windows. So what I did is I went and grabbed the Clouds document tab and tore him away so that he's floating, right? And then I simply grabbed him with the Move tool and dragged and dropped him over into the statue file. Then what we could do is we could rearrange the order of our layers. We could use the Move tool to move and reposition the objects on our layers. And we could also use Free Transform to scale and adjust and move the contents of our individual layers.